everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and in this video I'm doing the Phone Apps Book Tag, which was originally created by Jessie the Reader. I'll link that video down below. But jumping right in, the first prompt is contacts. Scroll through your contacts until you land on a random one and recommend that person a book. So, this tag is a little difficult for people who shoot their videos on their phones. Obviously, I can't scroll through my phone while it's recording this video. So, you're gonna have to trust me when I say that I pre-scrolled through and landed on a random name. And actually, the first time I did it, I landed like at the very top with my thumb, like above any of the contacts. So I had to do it twice. But the second time around, my thumb landed on my grandma. So my grandma is actually kind of into fantasy, but she's more into like lighter, happier fantasy, not like epic, dark Game of Thrones type stuff. Some of the top things that I associate my grandma with are The Princess Bride and Lord of the Rings and Willow. So generally a little bit lighter, happier fantasy. And so my recommendation for my grandma is The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is an adult fantasy, but it is low fantasy, not high fantasy. And even though it is an adult book, a lot of the characters are children, so it still kind of reads like a children's book. And it's just very happy and just has like a very positive messages, which I feel like is my grandma's jam. And yeah, so reading this one is like reading sunshine and having a warm hug, and has a little sprinkling of fantasy that I think my grandma would enjoy. Prompt number 2 is camera app. Share the last photo on your photo roll that features a book. And so I have this one, which by the time this is posted, I will have read a while ago, but as of right now, I have it pre-prepared to post on Instagram because I'm going to be reading it soon and I'll be posting it as my current read. Prompt number 3 is Notes app. What is the last book that had you writing down all of your thoughts? And I write down my thoughts for all the books I read. Because of this YouTube channel, I need to remember what my thoughts were during reading for my wrap-ups. But the last thing that I feel like I wrote maybe a little more than usual was the Imposter series by Scott Westerfeld, because this is a spin-off of the Ugly series, which is just one of my favorite series of all time, and so I had a lot of thoughts on these, a lot of feelings. But I'm also actually like currently very slowly working my way through The Lord of the Rings, and I've actually been doing tabs, which I don't usually do very many tabs. I did 2 in The House in the Cerulean Sea, but generally I don't do a lot of tabs. But I've been tabbing all of the like songs and poems because I thought that would be fun to be able to easily find them again if the mood struck. But next, prompt number 4 is email. What is the last book that you received in the mail? And that was actually the final book in the Imposter series, Youngbloods. I don't order books online very often, and usually if I do, they are sequels. Prompt number 5 is maps. Name a book series where you don't know where it's going. And for this one, I'm going with The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth. This is the first book in a series, and I don't know where this is going, partly because I feel like I already don't really clearly remember how it ended, even though I didn't read it that long ago. I'm gonna reread it before continuing with the series. But also partly because this is such a unique concept, and I feel like anything could happen in this world. In this series, all unfinished books, and really just all unfinished ideas in general, go to this library in hell. And oftentimes the characters in these books will try to escape and get their authors to finish writing them so that they can be kind of real, so that they can actually exist. So yeah, I feel like it's a series that could go anywhere. Prompt number 6 is weather app. Name a book that is sunshine, which is how I described The House in the Cerulean Sea, but I'm gonna go with Wonder by R.J. Palacio, which is also like reading sunshine. It's just such a happy, positive book. Prompt number 7 is Google Translate. Name a translated book. And I would recommend any book by Fredrik Backman. He is a Swedish author, so all of his books, if you're reading them in English, are translated, or anything other than Swedish. But the one I would recommend most is A Man Called Ove. This one, out of the 3 that I've read so far, is my absolute favorite. Although if I were recommending to my grandma again, I would recommend My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, which also features just a teeny bit of fantasy elements, less than The House in the Cerulean Sea does. Just a dash of kind of fantasy. Hard to explain, but also a very feel-good story featuring children and fairy tale elements. But moving on, prompt number 8 is transportation app, whether this be Lyft or Uber. But this one is name a book that took you on a ride. And for this one, I'm going with Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This one is just so action-packed and fast-paced and fun, and it really does take you on a ride. It is about a girl who wants to be a fighter pilot, essentially. So, takes you on a high ride. Prompt number 9 is Spotify. Recommend an audiobook. And I don't listen to audiobooks, so instead I'm going to recommend some podcasts. The first one that I would recommend is Poured Over, the Barnes & Noble podcast. I listened to this one, even though I literally have not read any of the books that the episodes are about. It's still a really fun podcast to listen to. And I actually bought a book based on listening to one of the episodes, and the book sounded interesting. So you could get some good recommendations. I also enjoy The Feeny Call if you're a Boy Meets World fan, and I'm actually recently very obsessed with Christine Riccio and Natasha Polis's new podcast, Those Forking Fangirls. Moving on, prompt number 10 is calendar app. Name an upcoming release that you were excited for. And this is not really an upcoming release because it's already out, but I'm really excited for the paperback release of The Anthropocene Reviewed. I didn't want to buy this one in hardcover. I just didn't want to spend that kind of money on it. So I have been waiting so long for it to come out in paperback, and it is finally coming out in paperback later this month. I've listened to all the podcast episodes, so I am going to be reading a lot of stuff that I have already listened to. But the book does have more than just what's in the podcast, so I did still want to have it at some point, just not in hardcover. It's been 2 years. But anyways, prompt number 11 is Clock. What's a book that had you losing track of time? And for me, this one would be The First Girl Child by Amy Harmon. This was a 5-star read a couple years ago, and is still just a book that stands out as one that I couldn't stop reading when I was reading it. And finally, prompt number 12 is Goodreads. What is the last book that you rated at 5 stars? And that was, again, Skyward. I read this one last year and fell in love. Total 5-star read. Looking forward to continuing with the series soon. And that was it for the Phone Apps book tag. I hope you enjoyed watching. Now onto the quote for today's video, which today I have one from The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, also the author of The Anthropocene Reviewed. But the quote goes, "My thoughts are stars I can't fathom into constellations." Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.